Okay, I've been putting this off for a fair while.
Show your move. Good news, everyone. Don't you little giddy when you see onions?
Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Radio Mike, and this is the inside of my mind. Again. Okay, so I know what you're probably thinking. Who the hell is Radio Mike? And why the hell has it taken him so long in 2020 to put out an episode of his podcast? All good questions. All very valid questions. And I appreciate you all asking me where the podcast is and what's happening with the podcast. And here it is. This is episode 1 of season 2 of 20th Century Boy, a podcast that just got pretty out of control last year. I think you'd agree if you were a long-time listener. A podcast that just, wow, so many things happened that I genuinely didn't think were going to happen. And I guess the title of this podcast, Who the Hell is Radio Mike, 2020 version or 2020 edition or whatever word I've decided to use in the title, is there for a really good reason, because I feel as though for the last few months since I last did one of these, it's a question that I've been pondering quite a lot due to a number of things that have happened in my life and a number of things that I maybe neglected to think about and stuff like that. But I guess I should sort of start from the start. Who the hell is Radio Mike? On paper, I am a radio panel operator and producer who also works on podcasts and has dabbled a little bit in TV production. I have worked as the producer of Will Anderson's podcast, Willosophy, for a few years now.
But you're a young person.
I guess so. I'm
Yeah.
going to be 25. I'm having a quarter-life crisis here. No.
I've been doing stand-up comedy longer than you've been alive.
Well, that's great. Don't have to brag about it. No. I also am the assistant producer on the Hamish and Andy podcast.
Radio Mike has since radioed down word from upstairs where there's a small kitchenette area that he's been working on boiling the water for half an hour. So far to no success.
Let's call
We
Mike
thought we'd
now, and
call
then we'll
Mike.
ask some questions of you.
Yeah, Jaden, first things first, we're going to get a boiling water update.
Hello.
Mike.
Hamish and Andy
Hey,
here.
Mr. Andy.
Hey, mate, how's that water going?
So good. Yeah, we'll be down really soon.
Yeah.
We're going well up here. We're swimming.
I have been a researcher on the TV show Hamish and Andy's Perfect Holiday. I have panelled several big radio shows in Australia, mainly Melbourne, but some of them are national shows, including the Hamish and Andy Drive radio show, the Hot Breakfast with Eddie Maguire, Luke Darcy and Will Anderson.
He's got the fastest trigger in the West. Radio Mike.
He doesn't muck around, Mike.
Jeez, does he
he's,
go?
He's ruthless. If
Yeah.
he thinks you're out, you're out.
Yeah, there used to be 9, Pluto, but we'll give Dwarf Planet. I mean, yeah.
He got them all, I reckon, didn't
Yeah,
he?
well,
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus,
Yeah.
Neptune. You get Neptune?
Did you get Neptune?
Neptune,
Yes,
I think,
I got
was the
Neptune.
first one.
That was
he
the
said.
first tune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Carrie and Tommy Drive show, amongst several other things in the radio space. I did this podcast, 20th Century Boy, every week for a year in 2019. We got to 48 episodes because I didn't start in the first week of the year. On top of that, I'm in a band called Release the Sounds. We put out our first album last year, which was self-titled, and you can find all that on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music or wherever.
I don't care what they say, cause I love you. You're a puppet, I'm a boy, but together we are two. I'll take you to the altar, you say I do. Mom's pulling the strings, but I'm connecting with you. I love
But I guess all of that stuff is sort of surface level. Outside of all that, I love playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on my Nintendo Switch while sitting on my couch or even in bed. I really enjoy movies and music and games and pop culture of all kinds and talking about it in extensive detail that no one would really ever talk about it in that much detail. But that's just me. And I think when I started this podcast last year, I wanted to explore all these things about me. And I did. I really did. And I really enjoyed it. However, I've been thinking a lot lately that I'm kind of back where I started last year. I don't really feel as though I've developed much. I feel like I'm back to square one in a way. And it always gets like that over the Christmas and New Year's period for me. I think it's predominantly because a lot of the work in the radio industry, where a bulk of my income comes from, kind of dries up over the summer. And for the past 2 years, I've been like, every January I end up with literally nothing to do. And I just feel so bored and I get so demotivated, unmotivated. And next time in January, I just need to book a really long trip for the month and go on it and then just come back to all the work that gets offered to me or whatever. And for whatever reason, I just didn't do that. And I ended up having a very long and lonely January where I pretty much did nothing and just sort of got left stuck in the inside of my mind. Reading lots of books, mainly books on psychology and the brain and brain plasticity and habit forming and things that I think will make me a better person or at least more educated on what's going on inside the inside of my mind. I don't know. I'm always just trying to be a better person than I was the day before. And I not always am, but I'm always trying. So I guess that's partly why over the summer I just stopped really doing anything. And I just sort of had this massive brain fog and lack of motivation and just a general disinterest in making any content. I was supposed to do a 4-part series with intern Mike, a character on this podcast, quite a well-known and popular character on this podcast. I just ended up doing 1 episode and then I just didn't want to do anymore. And I couldn't really figure out why. And I didn't really want to make anything. And I kept putting up walls and boundaries as to why I didn't want to do this podcast. And I started doing some soul searching and looking inside my mind to find answers and to figure out what I wanted to do. And I still don't really know that. I'm still trying to work that out. However, I realized that I spend a lot of my time by myself, and because of that, I get really stuck in the inside of my mind. And the thoughts kind of circle and spiral around, and I'm just sort of left thinking about everything on repeat, obsessing over past things and not really being able to progress. I sometimes feel I get stuck in the past. I get stuck in things that have happened and I can't move forward with my life for whatever reason. It just became this serious problem where I just felt like I wasn't really able to achieve anymore and I wasn't really able to grow as a person and professionally and in every other way. And I felt really, really stuck. And I guess the way I found is a good way to combat that is obviously, it is really obvious, but it's just trying to be vulnerable and talking about these things with your friends and trying to open up about how you feel and how you think and realizing that you're not actually that weird, but it's just because you're by yourself all the time you think you're really weird. And I guess that just means I'm trying to set goals for me to not be as alone and trying to analyze my thoughts and my behaviors and my habits as I always have done, but trying to be more mindful and meticulous of what I do automatically without really thinking about what I'm doing. Because there are so many times where I just feel like I do things on autopilot and I'm not really even thinking about I'm not really even thinking about what I'm doing. I just do these things out of habit and then I'm like, well, this makes me feel like this, but I can't not do it because it's so ingrained in my brain. And I feel like in 2020, I want to try and be actively and mindfully trying to unpack and unprogram the wiring and neuro connections of my brain. I started reading this really good book which was recommended to me by a colleague, and it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Really, really good book. I'm about halfway through. And as I always do, I go through these books with highlighters so I can like try and retain as much of the information as I can. And here's a really good passage that I just wanted to read. It says, "To create something different from what you've grown accustomed to in your personal world, you have to change the way you routinely think and feel each day. Otherwise, by repeatedly thinking and feeling the same way you did the day before and the day before that, you will continue to create the same circumstances in your life, which will cause you to experience the same emotions, which will influence you to think equal to those emotions. Perhaps your troubles feel so real because you constantly revisit those familiar feelings that initially created the problem." And I guess, and this episode of the podcast will be a bit like obviously different to like last year because it's just a getting back into it episode. So I hope that's okay with everyone. But it is my podcast, and I'm glad you're listening. Lots of people have asked about where I've been and why the podcast isn't out. So thanks for caring. But I got a lot out of that because I thought that it's true that it is so easy to just do the things that come into your head and believe the things that come into your head because it's just like, why wouldn't you? But it takes willpower, motivation, mindfulness, and actually, you know, a lot of work to change your brain and to change the way your brain is wired and change your habits so that you can be happier. And I saw this sign while I was walking to work, and it just felt like a sign from God. And it was just this big poster on the side of the road that said, "If you change nothing, nothing will change." And I think that's sort of the simplicity of it. I could have kept just being like, nah, I'm not doing the podcast again, fuck it. Even though I knew I did want to do the podcast, but I just didn't have the motivation to do it. And then today I was just like, well, all of this stuff that's happening inside my mind is exactly why I started this podcast in the first place. And I think people really enjoyed the openness and like, I don't know, the honesty behind some of the stuff I was talking about last year. Because I feel as though externally my life appears really great. Like I'm in a band, fuck yeah. I get to work on all these cool shows. I hang out with my friends all the time. I just have this really cool life, and I do, and I'm very grateful for all the things that I do have. But at the same time, often I feel quite lost, and I feel quite stuck, as I said before. And that's what I want to explore a bit more this year. Those are the kind of things that I want to think about this year. This podcast is a bit of a mixed bag. There's some personal stories, there's some mental health exploration, there's some pop culture analysis. There are other people that are often in the studio with me who participate in the show as well. And those guys aren't here today, but they will be here later. There is segments, there is listener interaction. You can always interact with the show, radiomikepod@gmail.com. It's Radio Mike on Twitter, radio.mike on Instagram, or call the number 1-800-GET-FUCKED, GETFKD, 1-800-438-353. That is the best way to get your voice on the show. Always, always looking for contributions from you guys. And I guess another thing that I've been really thinking about recently when it comes to the inside of my mind, and the theme of this podcast is always the inside of my mind, is something that someone said to me a few years ago, which was this girl that I was seeing who was great. And she said to me one day, like, you know, just because you have a thought and your brain produces a thought, it doesn't actually mean that that thought is reality. And it kind of didn't make that much sense to me at the time, because I was like, well, if my brain's thinking it, of course it's true. And she said, yeah, but you've got to actually think about, like, your brain is just a product of all your experiences. So if you think negatively, then your thoughts will be negative and self-deprecating, and then you'll just believe it. But you don't have to believe it, and you can actively question your thoughts and question what you think and how you feel. And that's how you change your brain. And I feel like it's funny that someone said that to me so many years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And only now am I starting to really understand the meaning behind that quote and understand the meaning behind what she was trying to explain to me. Because I feel like all of us get these recurring thoughts in our mind that can feel so real. And then all of a sudden you realize, no, that's not real at all. Like, you think that someone's angry at you or upset with you, and then they're like, no, like, why? I forgot all about that. I haven't even, stuff like that. And also these thoughts of, like, you're not good enough, or you're not attractive enough, or you're not, like, successful enough, and you need to do more, and you need to have this, and you need to, have a full-time job, or you need to have a girlfriend, or you need to have all these things that are perceived to be missing from your life. But then you look around and you're like, oh, well, heaps of people are single, and I don't have to have a partner just because other people do. I don't have to have a full-time job just because other people do. I can just do what I want to do. And I feel like that's a message I was trying to say in the first episode of the podcast a year ago, but just didn't really follow it. But anyway, I'm not perfect, and like I said, I'm trying to be a better person every single day. And that's just me. I hope you're still here with us. I don't know, I just thought that the first episode of the year would have to be something really reflective that I can sort of share with you guys to explain my absence. But I am really ready to start making stuff again, because I do love it, but sometimes I just need a prolonged break from it. Especially last year, because the podcast just didn't fit into the amount of time I was spending on full-time, like, working every day. And I wanted to do the podcast, but it became such a mental drain to do. I still love doing it and wanted to do it, but I was so tired to even think about doing it. And then I feel like I just needed all this space. So who do I want to be in 2020? Who the hell is Radio Mike in 2020? That's still something that I'm working on, and I'm sure we're all working on that kind of thing. I just want to try and, unpack and unlearn a lot of ingrained thoughts that are inside my mind. And that's kind of that. If you have any other experiences with this kind of thing, please write in or send a voicemail. I would love to hear your thoughts, and that'd be really, really awesome. But how was my summer, and what have I been doing? I moved into a new place, which has been really cool. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I get very, very lonely. I think I would like to live in a share house soon. If anyone listening is looking for a housemate, because I love it here, but I get really, really lonely and would love to live with people. So that's been great. Just been chilling in my place, playing a lot of Super Smash Bros. In a completely new area to where I've lived before, but I'm really close to my nonna's place and my uncle's place, which is actually kind of cool. So I can go over to their places if I'm feeling really bored and lonely. So that's always good. Other than that, I kind of fell off the grid a bit. And I guess I was sort of hiding away from 2 really big things that came up in my life last year, which I won't get too much in detail about, but I never spoke about them on the podcast really. But I had this big, quite a big falling out with a really good friend of mine, which is a massive shame, and it really affected me a lot. And I didn't expect it to, but it did. And I also started dating someone that I really liked, but it ended up ending. And yeah, I mean, these are the personal things that you don't see. You don't see these things on Instagram. And I started just getting really annoyed and angry at Instagram, because I just thought it makes you feel like you can't be just doing nothing. And it makes you feel like you always have to be doing something and you always have to be with someone and you always have to look incredible and be doing incredible things. And I wasn't. And I'm sure you guys aren't either, because I don't do Instagrams about all the shit stuff that happens in my life. I only do Instagrams about all the incredible stuff I do in my life, all the fun stuff that I love, to portray and curate this image of me being this awesome person that never feels sad, because I don't. I never feel sad or get bored, guys. My life is perfect. And in Release the Sounds, we obviously wrote a song about, I wrote a song about this with Jack, the Instagram song, which was our second single, which is like, the listens on Spotify are massive. So thanks to everyone who's been listening.
I'm travelling through Europe for my friends to see. I'm standing on the beach at Santorini. Do a post on the gram with the caption "Take me back," enticing all my followers to do a double tap. 200 likes, yeah, it's going strong. When I need validation, I turn Insta on. Oh, my best friend liked my post. My ex.
And again, I wrote that song nearly 2 years ago, and it's still as relevant to my life as it is now. Just being this generation that grew up on social media and being pretty much addicted to it, which is fucked. Other than that, I do have this one story that happened over summer that I really wanted to share on the podcast. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about what the podcast will be in 2020, which is something I'm still working out. And I guess this podcast never had a real, I guess it did have a structure, and there's lots of different segments that we do that are really fun, but it never necessarily had like a solid structure. It was just like different every week and lots of different things were happening, which sort of it got a bit overwhelming. And I'd like to make it a little bit more simple from my end this year, which doesn't mean that anything will necessarily be going away. It just means that I'd like it to be maybe a bit more focused on personal stories of my life and stuff like that. Still funny, still with the other guys, just a little bit more simplistic for me. And I thought, but what if you change it and everyone hates it? But I'm like, well, if you guys hate it, then that's like whatever. I can't change if you guys hate it, so whatever. But I actually want to start actively doing more video content on my YouTube. So go subscribe to that. It's just Radio Mike on YouTube. And I want to do some more like pop culture reviews and discussions and that kind of thing. So I'm going to be trying to be doing 2 videos a week. And Radio Keelan, who's a friend of the show, Radio Keelan, welcome to the radio family for the first one for the year. He watched it. He watched the first video I did, which is a review of Green Day's new album, Father of All. And he said that it reminded him of one of the pop culture analysis segments I do on this podcast anyway, just in video form. So I want to try and do a bit more of that in video form and a bit, more personal stuff on here, but it doesn't mean it's going to be changing heaps. So don't worry too much about that. Obviously this episode is really different because it's a really reflective kind of episode. And yeah, so go and subscribe to me on YouTube. I want to do a bunch of videos, so I hope you guys can join me for that. But now, on to this story. This just fucking story. It's dictated so much of the summer, and it really didn't have to because it wasn't a big deal. But because I have like this extremely malfunctioning brain when it comes to catastrophizing and thinking of the worst possible things that could happen in a situation, this is how my brain responded to this event. So I was running late for work and I was reversing out of this car park I was in, and I accidentally bumped into this guy's car behind me. There was no one in the car, it was parked. And because I was raised Catholic, I have this really guilty conscience. So I looked at the cars and it was pretty negligible damage in my opinion. It wasn't really that, there was just a few scratches. And I decided to leave a note. So I've left a note on the car. I said, hey, bumped into your car. Doesn't look that bad. Give me a call if you need anything. And I just kind of forgot about it. Later that night, I get a call from this guy. I don't pick it up because I was driving, but then I get a text. It's like, hey, Mike, you bumped into my daughter's car. I will be arranging a quote for the repair and will advise in due course. And I was like, oh, okay. Guess I'll be out $200 or something. Anyway, turned out it was going to cost $1,000, which I just don't have. I don't have that much money in my account. So I sent a text to this guy going, hey, I don't have $1,000, don't know what to do. Never heard back from him. And I thought, great. That's great. I don't have to pay any money at all. Awesome. Got away with it, I guess. All of a sudden, a few weeks later, I walk outside my apartment, I go downstairs, and across the road, I see this car, and it's totally smashed. The side mirror has smashed off. There's a dent, massive dent in the car. I'll try and put a picture up somewhere. And my instant thought is, oh my God, this guy has found out who I am, tracked down my car, and fucking smashed it. And I am freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, this is karma. This is karma. Bad things do happen to bad people like me, and now my car is fucked. This sucks. And then I freak out. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle it. So I call my uncle. I'm like, hey, can you come and help me? I don't know what to do. My uncle walks over and he like looks at the car, and there's all this like black stuff on the car, and he puts his finger on it and like dabs it, and he's like, oh, this is tar. There were road workers on the road today laying down tar. So obviously one of them has bumped into your car and smashed it. And my brain, which is on overdrive, going, oh my God, this guy smashed your car in a revenge attack, and now you've got to call the police, but he might come and kill you as well. And I just look at my uncle and I go, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought as well. I didn't even notice the tar. Anyway, me and my mum then tried to track down the roadworks company, who viciously denied that they had done anything wrong and claimed that it wasn't tar and it was in fact grease. But we can never really verify that. And so they rejected the claim on insurance, and we ended up having to pay the excess, which fucking sucks. So yeah, that was really annoying, and I didn't have a car for 2 weeks, and I had to ride the train everywhere. The train. Like a pleb. I had to sit on a train and read a book. It was the worst. It was actually the worst. Sitting on the train, you have to just sit next to someone and like be really small because you don't want to touch anyone on the train. And then like you have to use Google Maps to PTV everywhere you're going because you literally don't know how to get anywhere without your car, or you just rely on Google Maps for everything. Man, it was the worst. It was actually shit. Now I've got my car back. I'm like, oh my God, how did I do those 2 weeks on the train? Oh, my MyKey. MyKey is like the ticket in Melbourne, the train ticket. You have to top it up. It's so inconvenient. Nothing about MyKey is convenient. MyKey purposely makes everything hard for you. It's so hard to top up your MyKey. You have to go to specific places. Why can't they just fucking make it, you can top it up? I don't know. It's just annoying. Man, not having a car was so annoying. I don't get people who are like above the age of 21 and don't have their license. Just like, what are you doing with your life? Get your license. How do you take the train everywhere? Jesus bloody Christ. I can't believe that. We started writing songs for the second Release the Sounds album, and I want to do one more music video for the song Ave Maria, which has been one of the breakout songs, like I guess a fan favorite song. But I've got like 5 concepts for songs for the next album, which is really cool, and I'm really excited about them. So I guess that's something creative that I've been doing. And on top of that, I really want to suggest to people to go back and listen to the Christmas special of this podcast, because I had a really, really fun time making that. And I thought it was one of the funniest things that I'd done on this podcast. You've been a very naughty boy this year. I've been following you. Well, how have I been a naughty boy? Well, intern Mike, you've been watching a lot of Pornhub.com. No, that was for a maths health assignment where we had to measure up people's bodies and stuff. That's why I was on Pornhub. Oh, Mike, you think you're so clever with your excuses. We all know what you're doing. Watching pornography and masturbating. No, what the hell? What's that? I don't even know what that is. Intern Mike, I think Santa would know, mate. He sees everything. He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. How do you know all that stuff, Santa? I have cameras in all the children's houses. Well, Zeta, that's kind of weird. Well, how else am I to know, Mike? If you have a better solution, you tell me. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about one pop culture thing that completely fixated me and took over everything over the summer because it was one of the coolest things ever that I had no idea about until it was really late. And I can't wait to talk about, I really want to go see the Sonic the Hedgehog movie this week. Does look like a pile of shit, but I just think it looks like it's going to be so funny to watch this movie. So that's something I might try and do a review of on YouTube or something like that. But this is awesome. So Green Day did put out a new album, which is called, it's called Father of All. Also, like the explicit version is Father of All Motherfuckers, which is supposed to be this really edgy thing, but it's not exactly that edgy. And it was a really weird album. It was really mixed, like quite negatively reviewed, especially by fans. There is one really good track called Meet Me on the Roof that goes like this. And I did a review of it on YouTube, so go and look at that. However, fuck, this is awesome. There was like this track listing of an album that was leaked on like 4chan or something. And the person just wrote like 12 track titles, and they just said, leaked track list from new Green Day album. This is before Father of All was even announced. It was just these 12 tracks. And this awesome thing happened where this basically a band, some random pop punk band called Panicland made they essentially made a fake Green Day album using that track listing and like fooled fans of the band Green Day into thinking that it was a real Green Day album. And the guy does an impersonation of Billy Joe Armstrong on all the tracks that sounds unbelievably like Billy Joe Armstrong. It is actually impeccable. And they did this whole video on it. I'll cut some of the audio here.
So a few months ago, there was a Green Day track listing that someone leaked, and it was pretty obvious that it was fake. So we decided we'd write and record songs in the style of Green Day using that track listing, sort of like a fan fiction album, and then leak them out to the internet. And for a few months, people thought we were Green Day.
Yeah, so they basically systematically were like leaking songs and bits of songs and studio footage that was them pretending to be Green Day, and everyone on the internet believed it and thought it was actually Green Day, and this was their new album, like this secret album. And even when Green Day revealed they were doing Father of All, everyone thought that this secret album that was apparently called Magnum Opus of the Inglorious Kind. Everyone thought this secret album was like a secret second project of Green Day that was going to come out this year. So they just wrote all these songs, they basically wrote a full album, recorded them, mixed and mastered them, and started leaking them out, pretending they were real Green Day songs, and everyone fell for it. And then the band did that video where they're like, actually, we faked it, and everyone believed it, just as a publicity stunt. And they made a fake cover for the album. Like, they made everything believable as fuck. And it's so crazy that people fell for it. Like, the attention to detail was so insane.
So we decided to make an album cover for Magnum Opus for the same reason that we made the songs. It's just what we would want to see as fans.
The album that they've made, from what I've heard, like the tracks I've heard, is like absolutely unbelievable. And they said, like, this is what we want to hear as Green Day fans in 2020. This is the kind of music that we want them to make, and it's so different to Father of All. So they've made this fake album, and like it's just incredible. I've been obsessed with this song, which is the first song they put out from it, which is called Rome Falls. And if I'll put a bit of it here. You're going to be like, because when I was telling my friend, I told Jack about it, and he was like, yeah, but wouldn't you know straight away it's not really them because it wouldn't sound like Billy Joe? And I was like, yeah, you'll be surprised because it sounds exactly like Billy Joe.
When I'm recording the Billy Joe vocals, to get the impression right, I'll usually do a quick line from an actual Green Day song, and then I'll quickly pick up the mic and bang out the whatever I'm about to record. Well, no one is getting out alive.
So here is, I guess, the chorus or a bit of the song Rome Falls by the band Panicland pretending to be Green Day.
Body shake as I love you goodbye. Even California's cold some nights. Even Rome had to fall sometime. Honey, kiss me in the ruins of you and I tonight. Bloodied by the
It's so incredible, and it really brings back that like rock opera vibe that American Idiot and 21st Century Breakdown had.
I'm the son of Rachel Love, the Jesus of suburbia, the Bible love, none of the above, only steady dying of.
But it kind of sounds to me like it's a lot like My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade, and like, yeah, welcome to the Black Parade, and that. Almost like ironically peppered with all this like extra production that doesn't hinder it at all. It only like brings it up and makes it sound like really anthemic and loud and super, super awesome. Like the choir in the background of these songs.
And the sky falls down at the speed of sound to work two sculptures in the crowd. We'll be alright. I can hear the choir sing the lullaby. Oh, a body shake is
The other one that I really like, which is on their Spotify, Panicland Spotify, is called Burn It Down, which has this great like vocal hook throughout it.
making love with my demons. How can you hear them sing? Burn it all down, gonna burn it all down, gonna burn it all down. Burn it all down, gonna burn it all down.
And honestly, I'm so on board with like, I wish this was the real Green Day album that they put out, because it is so, so good. Like the way it's like these, you know, My Chemical Romance, and they were inspired by what Queen were doing. And I just think that it's like this epic, and that's why they called it magnum opus of the Inglorious kind. And it's just this big, bold rock opera style, and I really want Panicland to put the full album out, and I can just pretend it's a real Green Day album, because it is so, so good, and I absolutely love it. And I've been obsessed with it for ages. I also saw the movie Parasite earlier in the year, which won like all those awards. Man, that is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Everything about it. I want to do a review of it on YouTube, but it's probably too late. Probably everyone's done one by now. But that movie's amazing. You got to go see that movie. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been this year. That's kind of what I've been doing. And I guess now, so what am I doing work-wise? So like, work's been really weird, but now I'm kind of trying to just reassess where I'm at and realize like I have all this savings that I can use to do stuff, and I don't necessarily need to be working every day. Like I want to be making content every day, but I don't need to be just like picking up every possible shift at the radio station just because, like, to get money, because I don't necessarily need, like, I said at the start of the episode I don't have $1,000, but like I've now been able to save a bit of money that I don't have to work every day. At the moment, I'm not rich. It was, I think, Luke Kidgell's celebrity net worth on some celebrity net worth website. His net worth was like 70 million, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't have that much money." So yeah, we start back up on Hamish and Andy next week. We start recording the podcast, and I think it comes out March 5th, the first episode. So I'm really excited to get back into that and get back into working with those guys, because you learn so much working on their show with how busy it is and how much goes on. Willosophy, the show that I produce, it has been running non-stop. We didn't take a break. We moved from number 10 to number 7 on the Australian podcast ranker. So we are the 7th highest podcast on that ranker and the highest independent podcast, which is really, really, really awesome. And we had some really cool guests recently that I've really, really enjoyed. And I also, one of the podcasts I produced last year, Finding a Unicorn, actually got signed to Nova. So that's really, really cool. And I really like that. And yeah, so work-wise, I don't know. I'm just going to try and I've got this new idea for a comedy series that I want to do, which I will talk more about once it's in motion. And from there, yeah, me and Jack really want to do a Release the Sounds live show, acoustic gig. So that's something we've been talking about. But again, we're both really busy, so it's hard to do that. And other than that, I've just been, pondering, figuring out what to do next. YouTube stuff, this new comedy series I want to do, the podcast, my podcast, this podcast that you're currently listening to. I've got some really funny storyline ideas that I want to do this year. And so this podcast will now be weekly for the rest of the year, I think, / hope. There may be a bit of travel in the middle of the year that I'm planning at the moment, which I'm also very excited about, but we'll talk more about at a later date. But for now, I think let's leave it there. This episode was called Who the Hell is Radio Mike 2020 edition, 2020 revision edition, and I hope this gave you a little bit more of a perspective on who I am. My name is Radio Mike, and this podcast, as always, and as it always will be, has been, I don't know, like the inside of my mind or something weird like that. I don't know. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to hear from you on all the socials, email and phone for next week. Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic week ahead. And remember, be careful out there. I don't know why I said that. Okay, bye.